Caleb, you guys have this great story dealing with Mississippi, and it says Mississippi's black voters brace for SCOTUS to gut their political clout. And you walk through how black folks in Mississippi have been winning in the courts as relates to how they've been racially driven out of power, and the courts have been ruling in their favor. Now, all of a sudden, the courts are ruling by saying, listen, multiple races benefiting African Americans. Now Mississippi is sitting there going, oh, please, let's hold off, because when the Cala decision comes down, we're going to be in the clear. This right here is going to have a devastating impact on black political power in Mississippi and beyond.
Yeah, that's right, Roland. I'm glad to be on the show tonight. And the story that I've reported is about the Mississippi Supreme Court. Mississippi elects Supreme Court justices from a series of 3 different districts, one pretty much in the northern part of the state, one in the middle of the state, and one in the southern part of the state. And there was a lawsuit brought by black voters in Mississippi that said the districts are drawn in a way that dilutes the power of black voters in Mississippi. Mississippi, of course, is the blackest state in the country. About 37% of our statewide population is black in Mississippi. But right now, there is only 1 justice of 9 on the state Supreme Court that's black. There's only, in the state's history, ever been 4 Supreme Court justices on the state Supreme Court that have been black, all of them since 1985, and none of them have ever served on the court at the same time. There's no black justice that's ever had a black colleague on the Mississippi State Supreme Court. Federal district court judge ruled last year, yes, the lines are drawn in a way that dilutes black voting power in Mississippi. So the state legislatures under a mandate right now, they have an opportunity to redraw these districts that would enlarge black voters' influence in the central district. That's the central part of the state. And you know, they're moving, but not in too much of a hurry. We've had some placeholder bills introduced, and lawmakers, have explicitly said, we're waiting. We're going to see if Cala comes down before we adjourn. The legislature goes out of session for the year in April, and if it gets down to the end, we'll introduce a map. We'll do what the lower court has asked us to do. But that doesn't mean this situation is over. Even if we get through the end of the legislative session and lawmakers do approve a map as instructed by the lower court, and they increase the influence of black voters in the central district, give them more power to potentially elect additional black Supreme Court justices. That case is still on appeal before the Fifth Circuit. Cala will be decided by June at the latest. And when that comes down, if the Voting Rights Act is heavily weakened, then this order is heavily, it's at risk on appeal. We might never see these new maps used in an election.
And see, look, we've just had an election in Mississippi that reduced the Republican supermajority, and a couple of African Americans won. That was based upon a court ruling.
That's right. So there was a different voting rights lawsuit that attacked the composition of our state legislative districts. And you had courts say the same thing. The legislative districts are drawn in a way that weakens black voting power. So we had special elections that increased the number of black representatives in both the state Senate and the state House. And you're right, those races in the Senate were sufficient to break the Republican supermajority that existed in the Senate. So right on the heels of that, we've had a different district court say the state Supreme Court districts dilute black voting power, and that judge has really indicated she's likely to order special elections, but she wants to see the maps first that come out of the legislature and see if those are maps that she'll say pass constitutional muster, pass the fault that she found in the current maps, that there's a Section 2 violation. That's Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. So you're right, black voters have had a string of successes in the courts in the last couple of years bringing voting rights claims in Mississippi.
And listen, as you were talking about how they drew the lines. I mean, bottom line is we saw this for the longest in Alabama, and it was federal courts that ruled, listen, you're screwing over black voters. They had to create a second opportunity district that led to the election of Congressman Shamari Figures. They fought Louisiana. Louisiana, a third African-American, fought that. I mean, it was like, went to the Supreme Court, went back. They tried more tricks, go back, no, no, no. Then they create the second district that elects Congressman Cleo Fields, and then they came up with this other, oh no, let's another way to challenge it, and that's where the Cala case comes from. And so what we have seen, we have consistently seen white Republicans all across the South use the pen to screw black voters in so many different races, and without Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, without that, we're not going to see any sort of protection. And frankly, based upon those oral arguments, this Roberts-led court, guess what? They got the votes to wipe it out, and we are going to see a massive rollback of black political power when that actual decision comes down. I don't know of any, I've not talked to any black lawyers or constitutional experts who think that somehow we're going to be able to win this case based upon the questions that were being asked in oral arguments.
Yeah, that's definitely the mood among, a variety of legal observers in response to those oral arguments in the Cala case. Virtually all of the conservative justices in oral arguments seemed, skeptical at best about the current legal framework. There's still a kind of a question around the range of possibilities. At the most extreme, we could see a decision that just outright strikes down Section 2 as unconstitutional. There are other ways the court could probably attack the current framework while technically leaving Section 2 intact, but the end result very likely to look the same in either respect. One, that going forward it's much harder, if not just outright impossible, to win cases of the kind that we've seen black voters winning in Mississippi recently. And then at the more extreme end, depending on what happens in the decision in Cala, we could actually see either lawsuits from white voters, like we're seeing in Cala, trying to attack minority majority or opportunity districts that already exist, or we could see, an expansion of this mid-cycle redistricting that we're seeing right now, this redistricting war in places like, Texas, California, and now, potentially Florida and other states trying to get in. Other states have gotten in on it. If Section 2 falls, it's not clear how many states or how fast they could move depending on when Cala comes down. It might not be in time for this year's elections, this year's midterms, but we could definitely see southern states eliminate currently existing black majority districts, like the district in Mississippi that's represented by Representative Benny Thompson. So we could see, many of those opportunity districts across the South that are currently, held by black representatives redrawn and eliminated.
All right, then. Caleb, great reporting with the Marshall Project. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Real quick, going back to Greg and Reese, again, we keep trying to tell folk they got to pay attention to all of this stuff because all of these things are moving all at the same time, Reese. So you've got the Supreme Court action, you got what Trump been doing, you got what's happening in the states, you got Florida trying to redistrict, you got those weak-ass Democrats in Maryland who didn't want to move. I mean, again, this is what drives me crazy about soft, weak, impotent-ass Democrats who don't understand what's going on. The other side is playing for keeps. They playing for power. You can't sit here and say, well, no, we're going to do things a certain way in the right way. They don't give a damn. This is where you got to have a whole bunch of Louise Lucases in every state saying, we going to swing, let's swing.
Well, yeah, but people don't want black women in charge. I mean, that's the problem. Y'all want shit to be better, but you don't want the motherfuckers that's gonna fight tooth and nail for it because she cuss too much, or she wear long eyelashes, or whatever the hell stupid ass things y'all come up with, or she got she got an annoying laugh, whatever. So, you know, this is what we get when we deal in the superficial, when we deal in stupidity, as opposed to dealing with people that really are about that life. But what I will say is, when the reason why I don't call this Jim Crow 2.0, I call it Trump Crow, is because when these black districts get taken away and when black voter power gets diluted, guess what? Your white ass can kiss your Medicaid goodbye. You can kiss your SNAP goodbye. You can kiss your Section 8 goodbye. You can kiss your Social Security goodbye. You can kiss your workers' rights and protections goodbye. You can kiss every civil rights advancement goodbye, because we got that. We got that through blood, sweat, and tears, and we keep it because we vote. We are the conscience of the American electorate. And so diluting our power is going to make your life more fucked up, whether you realize it or goddamn not.
Greg, if folk out there are saying, hey man, this ain't gonna really impact me, I want everybody to be on record. We are on record right here at 6:37 p.m. Eastern on February 26, 2026. We gonna say a big ass hashtag we tried to tell you.
We are, and it's going to be necessary to do. Holly Greenwell often says sometimes movements skip a generation. In this case, maybe 2 generations. And as we heard the good brother Damon Hewitt say on Tuesday night in the State of Our Union, Damon said, things are going to get worse before they get better. In the case of Mississippi, let's say that the Cala case, in fact, does kick the teeth out of Section 2 of the Civil Rights Act. That means the lawyers are going to go back and try to preserve salvage some of Judge Aycock's opinion on new legal grounds. They're going to push to try to maybe get those adopted maps. Maybe they will fail. But here's the end game, seems to me. When folks like Latasha Brown or Cliff or April Albright say that we must emphasize the South, I agree with that. And I'll add this, we must emphasize the cities. There should be no supermajority white nationalist legislatures in the South, even with the extreme gerrymandering, if we will do what you and Reverend Barber and our good brother Gary Chambers out of Louisiana say, which is vote our numbers. Maybe they will have a white nationalist majority in those states, and I'm not at all sure of that because I don't even trust that Mississippi is as low as 37% black. I'd say at least 40% or more. But either way, we can stop them from running through at the state level these supermajority bills and legislation. Now, Atlanta, Jackson, Mississippi, Birmingham, New Orleans, you name it, go through the South. Charlotte, you go through the South. These cities are not white nationalist cities. Even as they can hamstring them at the state level when it comes to funding, and even if they continue to capture the federal legislature in terms of funding, the cities then become our place where we push back and where we consolidate power. It does, however, finally have to be based on this. When the white nationalists have shown you who they are, you must treat them as what they are, enemies of our common humanity. There will be no consensus. There will be no attempt to wrangle some form of crossing the aisle. No, now it is an all-out war, and we control the cities. At that point, let these rural whites who decide that they're going to vote against their interests because they want to embrace their white supremacy, let them eat it. And let's engage in colorblind constitutionalism, as Derek Bell would call it, in the cities. We're just giving out contracts based on the majority of the people in the city. We're just doing that. And guess what? If you control the mayor, if you control the city council, even if they try to starve you at the state level, you still have considerable power. And then this next generation, not these young people now, perhaps, will continue to run up and down and chase balls for the SEC or anything. But the next generation, when it gets bad enough, the pushback will happen. And guess what? At that point, I don't know what happens to the United States of America, but I suspect we will be just fine.